my mother-in-law is 86 years old. She lives in Pennsylvania still in the house where my wife was raised. And when we first got married, Mary Pat and I lived in a studio apartment over a liquor store in Summit. And it was not a great place. And about 3 weeks after we got home from our honeymoon, we invited my mother-in-law and father-in-law for dinner. And so they came into this place, and I could tell from the minute they walked in, they were not impressed. And we had dinner with them, and years later, my father-in-law, at Christmas one year that we were celebrating down at their house in Pennsylvania, he had a couple of drinks, and he decided to start telling stories. And he said to me, he dragged me over, and he goes, "Hey, Chris, remember when we came up for dinner right after your honeymoon? You remember that?" And I said, yeah, Dad, I remember that. And he said, "Your mother-in-law cried half the way home." And she said, "I cannot believe what a dump he has our daughter in." So I always remembered this story, right? So about 20 years later, we are at the governor's mansion on the day of my inauguration, and we're having lunch, just the family. And so I see my mother-in-law standing in the library at Drumthwacket, which is one of the most amazing rooms in the house. My kids call it the Harry Potter room. It looks like out of the Harry Potter movie, you know? And I see my mother-in-law kind of looking around and look at the place. And I come up behind her and I put my hands on her shoulders, and this is going to be my moment, right? I'm going to get even for the crack about what a dump I had her daughter in, right? So I grab her shoulders and I whisper to her, I say, "Hey, Mom, a little bit better than that first apartment in Summit, huh?" And she turned around and looked at me and she said, "Sure is, Chris. It took you long enough."